Hey, everyone's coming back. Welcome back. Welcome back to the main room. We're in the last 10 minutes of our virtual on-ranch demo. I think it's going really well. I'm so thankful for all the presenters. Now we have just 2 minutes per group to hear what you talked about. So we're going to start with Craig. Craig Gifford, what did you guys talk about in your livestock group? Are you back yet?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Had a really good discussion, primarily focused on the research parameters associated with the Criollo and the Criollo crosses. And I think Dr. Duff he pretty much walked us through some of the details associated with this study. I think he introduced most of that this morning, or a chunk of that this morning. But just to reiterate that they're dealing with some Angus, Red Angus, and Brangus crosses, but then further elaborated that they are interestingly going to DNA test these calves to confirm some of the parentage and some of these crosses, which is a great idea. And then that the calves, we spent a little bit of time explaining that the calves are going to be finished out but are going to an actual trained sensory taste panel where they will do things like the Warner Brasher shear force. They put them in with, again, the trained taste panel, so it's not just a bunch of college students going in and tasting these. So that's we're really thankful to have Texas A&M as collaborators to do that. And then also, kind of, you always adapt research, and so I thought it was really interesting. The group has done that, where we're experiencing drought conditions here in Las Cruces, but they're moving them to Clayton, the Criollo cows to Clayton, and they're going to monitor their movement and their grazing preferences between the native rangeland and the wheat pasture. So that will be interesting to see how that develops. And again, just they really reiterated that they're just subjecting these calves to normal production practices, including implants, feeding the calves. They're going to monitor individual intakes to really test how these calves perform beyond just the weaning period as well. And thus far, the economic returns look pretty good, and noted that those with the Brahman cross tended to be discounted more than any of the other groups. So I think that sums up most of that. Is that right? Glenn, you can chime in if I omitted anything, but I think that captured most of our discussion.
Craig, that was perfect. That was exactly 2 minutes. All right. If I can cancel this, that would be really good. Okay. Okay. All right. Now we're going to move to Jason. Jason Smith. What'd you guys talk about in your group?
Yes, ma'am. So some general questions really around wheat, some of them around the TAM 204 variety, some about pasture and grazing. One of those was really regionality of the TAM 204 versus just wheat as a crop in general and our ability to graze it. And I think one of the things that we really discuss is wheat as a nationwide crop. It's not necessarily grazed nationwide, at least not from a standpoint as a dual purpose crop, because we will, as we move north, our ability to graze it and still be able to generate a harvestable crop decreases. Some questions on the proportionality of irrigated versus dryland wheat, and that's as Jackie mentioned, it's an ever evolving, ever changing, year by year answer. And a lot of that's really just going to be dependent upon a ton of factors: price, cattle, some of those kinds of things. And then one of the last questions was, I think, went back to Carolina's presentation on an aspect of that in this project and using manure for rangeland. And that question was, are we using much manure to fertilize wheat? And I think the answer to that is really regionally dependent. So if we're producing wheat in confinement cattle feeding areas, for the most part, as we think about the Southern Plains, so areas with a lot of feed yards, areas with with intensive dairy production. So from a Texas Panhandle standpoint, we think about Dalhart, we think about Stratford, think about Cactus and Dumas. Those areas, I assume a lot of the same would be true for Clayton. And that area would be, yeah, we're probably going to put a lot of that on wheat. We get outside of that, the fertilizer value of that manure and the transportation requirements are probably going to limit our ability to economically do that. Jackie, is there anything that I missed that's coming to the top of your mind?
No, I think you covered it very well. Besides that, I don't want to be quacked at. So
Perfect timing. You made it. So sorry for my obnoxious quacking. All right, so we're going to move over to Sherry Spiegel, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about the soil health group and what you talked about there.
Hi, everyone. We had 11 people in our group, and we had a mix of ecologists and NRCS soil conservationists. We had somebody from a land trust, a graduate student. We had a really interesting discussion about sort of information gaps around soil health. A lot of us think about rangelands and lands that we manage in terms of ecological sites and state and transition models, which is a framework classifying types of soils and geology over space and then change in vegetation over time. And so that's kind of how we perceive and kind of deal with these large, extensive landscapes that have so much variability over them, over space and time. And so we were really thinking about how to get better information about soil health into that type of framework to help producers and other land managers manage resources toward a soil health perspective. And so actually a good idea came up to potentially think about a handbook to contribute or produce a handbook over time. And hopefully this group will get together again to talk about that in the future. Manure also came up as a soil health potential, as a potential way to a cost-effective way to improve soil health on rangelands, which is really a big question mark that needs a lot of research. So it's great that came at Clayton. So thank you.
All right, good.
I didn't hear any
the
quacks.
time. Yeah, you know, you had 26 seconds left, so good job, Sherry. All right, and then I'm the last reporter. I was in the Aquifers group, and we had conversations along two themes for the most part. The first theme, or the first question, was around water as it relates to cattle, and really understanding that we know these high-level facts about sort of gallons of water per head of beef, but sort of the role, understanding and trying to garner a deeper understanding of the role of cattle in the hydrologic cycle. And we talked a bit about technologies, different technologies for moving water with cattle and different sort of water saving strategies. And then we also got into some questions around complexities and comparing other aquifers in other locations with the Ogallala Aquifer, and understanding our growth of understanding around the use of the Ogallala aquifers better. And so there's a need to compare it more deliberately, kind of as was reflected in Kate's presentation. So it was a really great conversation, and we could have used, I think, a lot more time, but it was great to get to chat with each other. Kate, did I miss anything?
No, that's perfect.
All right, so I think it's almost time. I'm going to turn it back to Glenn for the final word on this virtual on-ranch demo.
Again, it helps if you unmute. Would like to thank everybody for participating. It's the next best thing to being in person. I think we had really good participation today. And just as a heads up, OEIE, you don't know how hard it is, not say EIEIO, but it's OEIE will be sending via an email a survey for feedback. Please participate. We use that in our reporting, and that will help us in future presentations or future meetings that we have. Again, thank you, everybody. We truly do appreciate your taking the time to be with us this morning. And thank you to all the presenters.